welcome to our second instalment of the Harry and Meghan saga. What are your notes from this one?
Yeah, so from the off, again, so staged. So it's the way they get into the car and it's all filmed. It's like, oh, how are you doing? Oh, how are you doing? They didn't even put the seatbelts on, I don't think, which is interesting given the initially. It started with the paparazzi. They were trying to sort of look at that. So it's like, oh, the paparazzi are around. Oh, don't be careful, be careful. And from the beginning, from the first episode, it's like playing into his securities. But when you actually look, there wasn't any paparazzi anywhere. Nowhere.
Yeah, you're right. When they're in the car, they didn't put the seatbelts on, and you think they would, considering that they're comparing themselves to the level of Diana and what happened to Diana. You think they'd be paranoid enough to put the seatbelts on. But the thing is, celebrities get papped all the time. All celebrities. The royal family, it happens to more, especially in the UK. But there's people that get papped all the time. But she was definitely playing to his insecurities on that car ride. There's no two ways about it. No two ways about it.
Yeah. So reaction, and so it's like making his insecurities all surface and bubble over. Like, oh, look around. Oh, let's look behind in the back window. There's no paparazzi around. There wasn't any leaving the airport. Whether that was a case that, oh, that means that everything's under control, it just does not feed into what the claims are, you know.
And speaking of paparazzi and speaking of things that are staged, and to be honest, after watching Volume 2, I don't know why, but I'm more upset with Netflix for the angle that they're trying to spin. And one of those angles, and we'll come up to this later, which is Brexit. But one of the title shots that they used in the trailer for this series was a bunch of paparazzi waiting for Harry and Meghan. It was on the screen for like 2 seconds, if that. But that was actually from the Harry Potter premiere.
Wow. I mean, talk about a stretch. If they're having to use something so... I mean, that would have been from years before as well. I mean, how long have the Harry Potter films been out for now? The last one would have probably been before they'd even met, even if it was the last one. So there's that much of an abundance of an issue with paparazzi around that they have to use stills of all the cameras and things from something that's completely unrelated. What is that for?
And there was that other shot that you said to me, which was where they were kind of walking, and it looks like someone's took a picture of him from above. But that guy said that he was one of the, authoritative photographers, and there was nobody else there. So for me, even the trailer was smoke and mirrors, and this episode is even more so smoke and mirrors. So one of the next things that I saw was when her mum came on the talks, and to be honest, the UK had a lot of respect for Meghan's mum. She was sat in that wedding on her own because none of Meghan's other family attended, and she did it with grace. She did, really graceful, really courageous woman. So she said, she told her mum, she rang the mum and she said, oh, I'm going out with Prince Harry. Not Harry, but Prince Harry. And her mum seemed to know exactly who she meant. So she knew of Prince Harry, even though, again, Meghan claims that she didn't know who he was, even though on the last episode we've debunked that now, because she basically gave him an interview and scrolled through his Instagram. And then there was, straight after the mum, one of her friends said, oh, Meghan rang me and said she was dating Prince Harry. So, and they also knew who he was. So what does that tell you?
So everybody seems to have known who he was, including Meghan's inner circle, which I'm not entirely sure a few of them are in her inner circle. They seem to have an agenda, which is another thing, an agenda, which was accused of against her previously. Yeah, immediately. Immediately, was like, oh, we can't tell anybody. Oh, yeah, I know. It's like a novelty at first. So it's not only do they know who Harry is, but it's a novelty that she's going out with Prince Harry. So that's like, it's not just knowing who he is, it's understanding the concept of an American girl meeting her Prince Charming is a novelty. So they understood that level of the situation. Suspicious indeed. But yeah,
Definitely.
so it's funny. So, well, this is it. So just to go back again with regarding the paparazzi, and so when it sort of started to surface, everything that came out with them, she was saying, "Oh yeah, there's loads of paparazzi around. Oh, I got 9 or 10 paps." So she counted them. Could you imagine the footage that they used in the original episode, the first one? Kate going, "Oh, there was." I don't know. It looked about 30, at least 30 paparazzi people around taking pictures of her. Very demeaning way. Everything that Meghan seems to have a picture of is very distant. I've not seen a single evidence so far, maybe 1 or 2, when it's sort of understandable given proximity, but not like the level that even Kate had, experiencing incredibly close shots. And Harry messaged her saying, oh, well, be careful. So she's obviously using his fear against the situation. So I'll be careful. Yeah, there's a few paps. Don't look like you're smiling too much. And that's what was said. Don't look like you're smiling, or like you look like you're enjoying the paparazzi. Well, maybe if the shoe fits. If the shoe fits. Yeah.
Again, all smoke, all mirrors, all exaggeration. We know that now
Yeah.
from the title sequence where there was photos that are implied to be for Meghan, but clearly are not. People have found that out. So the previous episode we went into Harry's childhood. In this one we went into Meghan's. And of course, we were treated again to that commercial story. She changed the commercial,
goodness.
guys. That to me must have been the start of this grandiose narcissistic personality. Like the attention she would have got from that, everyone telling her how brilliant she was. And she even says that after that she went to middle school and she was like, I'm an activist. Yeah. But don't get me wrong, for that time of life, was it like the 90s? It would have probably been impressive, especially because she's a young girl. So it would have been impressive that she did that. But at the end of the day, she wrote to them, and a studio executive probably thought, oh well, this is going to get some publicity,
branding, marketing,
but
definitely.
She just says it again and again and again. And she also treated us to a poem.
She recited the whole thing.
Oh, I can't actually believe she recited the entire thing.
Yeah, there's just no kind of element of like self-awareness, clearly no self-awareness. And again, it's nothing we haven't heard before. We haven't heard anything before that we haven't already been subjected to. The only things that we have maybe heard are viewpoints, and that's from Prince Harry so far. Nothing's new that she said. Maybe, oh yeah, I went to my school and I wrote in my book like, oh, I'm going to be rich and famous, and I'll tell you what. And that's just that to me. I mean, of course we aren't who we were when we were 11. Of course we're not. We all change, and particularly at being such a young age. But it's at the same time, it's like she had that kind of approach and mentality, and that she said she was a daddy's little girl who obviously has got no feature in this whatsoever. Guess that's all sorts of reasons behind that. Make of that what you will. She's there on the set of it's a TV show called Married with Kids, and everyone knows what that TV show is. Everyone. It's quite a big prolific show in the 90s, set around family. And so that's probably where she got her first taste of the whole the world side of things. And yeah.
Yeah, I'd have been a daddy's girl if he was taking me to films that's TV sets and meeting loads of famous people. I would have probably been a daddy's girl as well. And just on that, like, she wrote the rich and famous thing. She had a taste of it. One of her friends described her as relentless, which she clearly is. And then what did she say about her mum? She described her mum as a
it was so.
sister.
Yeah, a controlling over sister. Like, I would say, like, if I
Older
was to
sister,
ever
sorry.
describe my mum, yeah, it was just as a controlling over sister. If I was to ever describe my mum in such a manner, I think she'd be particularly happy about it. And the mum said from it, she was like, oh, and it's always stuck with me. And I don't know, it just felt a bit like, it sounds a little bit bitter, that does. Sounds a little bit bitter.
It does really, because, you know, you mentioned as well that she described her own brother and sister as her father's two older children.
Adult children who moved out. That was revealing as well. So she's at the same time she said she was daddy's little girl. So my father had two adult children who left the house, and it's like, well, actually, that's your brother and sister. Whether you get along or not, you still would acknowledge that fact that they are your siblings, whether you are, you know, close or nothing like that. That's what they are. And if they're not, that's an interesting question. Why aren't they? And this is the thing. Why don't we ask these sorts of questions about Meghan? Okay, rather than like picking roses and feeding chickens, right, which seems to be like a common theme, rather than sort of tell us how amazing you are, why not talk about your flaws? Why not? Why not do that?
Because she doesn't have any. She's relentless, she's ambitious. According to her mum, she's a straight-A student who's smarter than she ever was, even though she failed the test to be a foreign officer in Buenos Aires for the United States. So you can't, you know, she can't be that bright if she fails a test like that. But everyone's just falling at her feet like, oh, she's so amazing, she's so amazing. This is their story, right? We know that. That's what they've said the whole way through. So, of course, everybody's there blowing smoke up the bums. It just sounds quite unbelievable, to be honest. And to be honest, we were right before regarding the racist rhetoric. But I tell you what, she's going in for it. And Netflix have been using some smoke and mirrors there. I can tell you that for free.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, there's definitely an angle here. You can tell. I knew that anyway from the first episode when they started to use, like, you know, public figures who've spoken with political views. You know.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah, of course.
Has anyone ever hugged you?
Oh, yeah, okay. That was. I'll have to admit that was a little bit on the personal side, really. That was. I mean, could you say bigoted?
Jarring?
Yeah, it's a bit bigoted.
Well, let me tell you that people in England hug their friends.
We do.
It's not jarring.
I mean, I think I'm. Well, as I said, I think my family's slightly more affectionate in that manner. It's just the way that my mum brought me up, with just a little bit more huggy. Not to say that I'm going to hug a stranger either. Not to say that Meghan was a stranger, but she obviously name dropped Kate and Will again. She thought, oh well, when the doors close, then that's when everything goes to normal. No, you just, that's one part of it. You know, you share the professional side of things, and the doors are closed. You've still got to build your own relationships in that situation. You can't just immediately expect everything to be the same. But as I said, your family, you know, you're sort of like slightly less than me, but like, yeah, of course we hug each other. You know, we're not made of ice, for goodness sake. But wow, I mean, that's a cultural divide potentially. But I don't know. I've known Canadians, I've known American people, and they haven't necessarily been any different in a way.
Same. I met a Canadian for the first time just the other day. One of my partner's friends, and we didn't hug each other.
Not the first Canadian, by the way. Not the first Canadian, mate. Just this particular one, right? Okay. Yeah.
No, I lived in Canada for a little while, and I can honestly say that upon the first meeting of people, they didn't go to hug me, and I didn't go to hug them. Some Americans I've known throughout the years. And again, upon meeting each other, we didn't, you know, automatically run and hug. It's very, but just calling us a whole nation makes British jarring for British people. No, it isn't. Like, where are you going?
No, it really isn't. Yeah, really
It's
isn't at all.
ridiculous. No, but one of the other things I noted, and we're going to talk about the race issue. So it was funny because they had a commenter on saying that the tabloids were run by white people in the UK.
Oh, wow.
And
yeah.
to be honest, the majority of people who work anywhere in the UK are probably majority Caucasian, because the country is 80% Caucasian, because it's historically European, and Europeans are historically Caucasian. So whatever. But the person that duped Princess Diana into giving an interview, who has now been disgraced, was Martin Bashir.
And he was of Indian descent.
Of Indian descent, yeah. So,
and that was in the 90s.
That's the problem with absolute statements. Is that they're wrong, because they can't possibly be absolute statements, especially considering that one of the most controversial interviews ever done, illegal actually, that they found, was by someone of Indian descent. So. There you go.
Yeah, in this country, and it's a very senior figure. I mean, he obviously, the whole Michael Jackson thing as well. He did that one too. I mean, again, separate thing, but very very interesting manners. But you still wouldn't you'd view him as a journalist, right? You wouldn't view he's white, or he's of Indian descent. I mean, we're having to sort of make that explanation when I don't think an explanation like that should be made. He was just a bad actor. Which I think quite a few of the people who are contributing to this are also bad actors. I mean, like it's how it is, right?
Speaking of bad actors for a second, so one of Meghan's friends said, you could tell she was destined for bigger. She was on Suits for 7 years and then left to marry Prince Harry. If she was destined for bigger, surely she would have left like season 3 and been in a film.
Right.
So what was she destined for? What bigger thing was she destined for? Because she certainly was never cast in it.
Absolutely. I mean, it was just, from her as well, it was just this huge, grand, like, Meghan's incredible. She's like ethereal. She's like from on high. She holds the door open for everybody. It's like, wow, what's like minutiae sort of nonsense is this stuff? Like, it's like, I open the door for people. I don't expect accolades for that situation. It's just a common courtesy. I hug people though as well, so maybe I'm not British after all.
Maybe holding the door open for people is jarring in America and Canada.
According to Meghan. According to Meghan. Well, this is the thing.
How low is the bar if you think someone holding the door open is especially kind?
Yeah, it's quite a tell. It's quite a tell. I've noticed there's quite a lot of this going on with just what we've watched so far. There's a few things that are like, oh, okay. Like, there's quite a lot of subtext. If this is like the best version and the best presentation, then it ain't really doing the job. It's not doing the job. And as I say, regarding the situation, it was like, it's a feedback in a little bit, especially with the first episode what I mentioned, about her using like commonalities, right? So it's like, this is what we have in common, this is what we are like, this is why we're so similar, and things like that. Harry was the one who used this turn of phrase. It didn't ring true to him having that. It seems like something that she would say that then puts it into his head, that then he thinks he thought of, right? And that was to call them each other products of divorce, right? So we're both products of divorce. And so it's like somebody who might have a little bit of this is a way I can get involved with somebody. This is like a connection that we've both got together. We're both products of divorce. And so, yeah, that's true. You can certainly have a connection with that. But when you just sort of add the pieces together, it's just yet another thing that they have that she can go, we really went through it. We went through it, guys.
I want to know. Is she talking about a parent's divorce or her own divorce?
Oh, yeah, that's true. I mean, I guess her ex-husband is also a product of divorce to some extent.
There you go.
Yeah, and then I guess if you want to be all sensationalized, we all know why Princess Diana and King Charles divorced. We all know that. That's open season. Well, why did her parents divorce? You know, if she wants to get all open book, anything like that, then isn't that something that people could find quite interesting, or would that be too poorly managed?
Yeah, that would be way too poorly managed. The whole thing is smoke, mirrors, and complete and utter control.
Contrivance.
So exactly. So, but she's tripping herself up even in the same episodes here. So, she was talking about race, and she said that her race wasn't an issue until she went to the UK. However, she mentions a story where someone in the USA called her mum the N-word, which is abhorrent. She also mentions that when she was little and she used to go to shops, people used to presume her mum was the maid because she was a lot whiter skinned. She also says that she was too black for some people, too white for some people. And in Hollywood, that was an issue. So it's like, obviously it wasn't just the UK then. You obviously had those stories in America. So what are you talking about?
So rather than lay this claim against us as such, she was already experienced it there. Her agent said like, oh well, we couldn't put her through for roles for black people because she didn't look that way. And okay, well, so then they're making sort of judgments based on that too. So what is this situation? So it's like, oh, I never experienced anything like that in the States. And in the same documentary, you've literally just told us that you've experienced exactly that thing in the United States from your agent. So what is that? How does that work?
Look, experiencing it anywhere must have been awful. It must be,
of course,
awful. But the problem is, it's just the lies. You can't, exactly as you've just said, you can't say you've only experienced it in the UK and then tell us all these stories where you've experienced it in America, the country of your own.
Yeah. I mean, this is just a little bit of an observation, really. I think I think the thing's set now with the whole, for example, like Amber Heard thing, right? So Amber Heard, it's like, oh, I think people pretty much like realised what she was doing, right? Now, I'm not going to, obviously it's two different people, but one thing I did notice with that is this over-explanation of details during that, which I think is something like, you know, you can sort of start to, if someone over-explains like really sort of particular details about something, it just makes things a little bit more suspicious. It makes them feel like a bit inauthentic. And that certainly was the case with that one. Which says, oh yeah, I remember getting in the car and, you know, my mum's knuckles were white after obviously experiencing that really horrible thing that happened. But it just, I don't know, when you sort of really go into like, you don't remember details like that when you're 11. I certainly don't. Do you? Like details like that, like really?
No.
It just starts to sort of not compute. It starts to come across as like, oh, it's a nice story. It's like a scene from a movie. A lot of this situation, when she's talking about her situation, it's like just literally describing scenes from movies. And everyone's had a history and a past that's not too nice, or maybe there's good parts and bad parts. But you don't sort of give details to a scene. And she calls herself a writer anyway. I mean, she wrote that lovely poem. So like, so she's clearly a writer. So maybe she's just writing stuff into things. But that's just a vibe.
It's a shame that she's still not in the UK because she could have gone up for Poet Laureate.
She could have been. She could have been the next Caroline Duffy.
Exactly.
We had to study that over here in school, by the way. It's like a high school essential thing, isn't it? But I think this sort of feeds in a little bit actually with what you were mentioning just now. So from the beginning, really, what they're trying to do again, and I brought this up in the first episode, is it's a political thing. There's a sort of a political aspect here, right? So
Yeah, there's definitely a political aspect, and again, it's all smoke and mirrors, and it's so strange. So Brexit was referenced, and I'll let you go into that with more detail. But the comment I want to make on Brexit is the campaign and the vote. The vote was May 2016. The first time Harry and Meghan met was July 2016. So all of the footage that they showed you was done and dusted before they'd even met, which is very
Well,
weird.
the campaign would have been long before that. I do think what they're trying to sort of hint at is that now the UK has suddenly become polarised, and it has become polarised probably, okay, but I don't understand the particulars of why they're saying this is a race-related issue, because Brexit is based upon Europe leaving the UK leaving the European Union, right? Now, again, in terms of if you want to make it a racial thing, Europe is predominantly white. It's just that's what the continent is. That's a fact, right? So what has the race thing got to do with that? What has the race thing got to do with that? Because that's just Britain leaving the European Union. And what's interesting about it, I didn't really. They started to use like a few very sort of particular images to build up this thing, and they didn't find that many. They didn't find that many because it is a minority that potentially aren't the most amazing people. But you can't shine a light on that and go, okay, well, this is what this is now, so we're going to make this, right? It just does not fit because it doesn't make anything to do with that at all. I do think what they're going to try to put is like there was a headline to talk about Megxit. Now, I don't know if people not understand, right, but occasionally in journalism, you might use a bit of a joke or a bit of a wordplay or a bit of punning, like sort of thing, in order to, especially media's in headline, they do that. The media, they make a headline. So they put Megxit with Brexit, right? That's probably what it's taking a lot of work there to really connect the two. It's taking a lot of work to get to that point. It was just a joke because that was a common thing that entered the vernacular at that period of time, understandably so, because it was a big story. So let's just base this on the country as a whole, right? Over half the country, just over, voted to leave the EU. I don't understand what any of this at all has to do with Meghan Markle. Nothing whatsoever to do with Meghan Markle. I mean, could you imagine being so grandiose and so delusional, I think is probably the best word to use, delusional that you believe that a huge political decision that a country has made, whether you agree with it or not, has made, is somehow about you?
No, I can't believe I'm actually doing that.
Could you imagine?
That's the most ridiculous thing, especially a huge decision that the country's made when you weren't even together with Prince. You hadn't even been on a date. You hadn't even been on the third date to Botswana. She didn't
even know who he was.
She didn't even know who she was. She had zero clue. But that's the whole point. Like the headlines that were like straight out of Compton and stuff. Yeah, okay. But Brexit had nothing to do. And Brexit is Brussels exit. Mexit is like Meghan and Harry exit. So the words are just smushed together. Like we do with everything in the UK, we think it's funny.
Portmanteau. Yeah.
Yeah, do you remember like the Platinum Jubilee was Plattijubes?
Yeah. It's a portmanteau. We like a portmanteau. We like a bit of wordplay. We like, especially the media and stuff like. And I'm no fan of the media. Of course, they're terrible. They hacked some of the phones for people who are related. Not Meghan though. She'll just take credit for it. So they never did it to her phone because lessons have been learned, etc.
Yeah.
But she's like taking all of these things and just, I don't know.
That's the thing with the whole smoke and mirrors thing. I mean, when they were showing Brexit again, Brexit happened before Harry and Meghan even met. But they were showing Nigel Farage, who's a very, if you're not from the UK, and again this is aimed at an American audience, if you're not from the UK, he is a very controversial figure. He's over to the right politically, and he is controversial in Britain. And when he says immigrants, he's talking about unkempt immigration, which is freedom of movement in Europe, that yes, some people did probably have a problem with. And that's because it was completely unkempt. So basically, if someone from England is a murderer and they get out to jail, they can go and live in Germany and carry on murdering if they want to. And essentially, there was a case where a Polish man had murdered his wife, and he was in prison in Poland for 12 years. And because of the Freedom of Movement Act, you're basically allowed to go wherever you want, unkempt and unchecked. So he moved to England, and he murdered somebody in London. Okay, so that's where they're talking about immigration. It's not necessarily again saying that all immigration should be stopped, but it's saying that immigration should be vetted, and whether you believe in that or not, monitored, yeah. But he's a particular controversial figure. They also interviewed some racist old man on the street, which every country has them. I don't care where you're from.
Yeah, of course.
And it's all sensational. Like, and Boris Johnson, we want to leave Europe. What has that got? That happened before we even got there. It's got nothing to do with it. It's almost like Netflix have gone, oh, what's some footage from 7 years ago that we can pluck out of the air? So even longer than that with the campaign. It's probably more like 8 or 9 years ago.
Yeah.
That we can pluck out. Yeah. And at the moment, people, there's a lot of anti-Britishness going around because of what happened to 500 years ago. And this, to me, is slightly jumping on that bandwagon, but not as blatant. And to be honest, I just think it's gonna leave a really bad taste in a lot of people's mouths.
Particularly with Harry, because you can sort of understand it with Meghan, because she's obviously somebody who's quite, misguided in her mind. She probably thinks she's got the answers, narcissistic, believes that, very platitudes. I mean, they keep calling each other H&M, and that is honestly it is, every time I hear it, I'm like, oh, I don't know, maybe just a piece of my soul dies.
Has somebody got a copyright on that?
I don't know. Maybe. Yeah, H&M, yeah. I always think of every time I hear it, I think it's like, isn't that clothing line? But so yeah. But yeah, this is the thing. So just to sort of wrap this up and then to make a little prediction about what's coming next. Again, more the same stuff, empty, showing. Do that instead of just telling. We're being told this is what's happening. We're being told this is this. She wants to make it about hers and their story, right? Or our story, whatever she wants to talk about that. But then she's happily going to sort of make these assertions about the press. What about their story? I don't know. It's just so self-centric. That's my summation of this episode. It's just self-centric nonsense.
Yeah, I think the next episode's going to be about the wedding, which you will see on camera is a joyous occasion, and millions of people turned out for it. Millions of people waved and wished her well, but I think somehow they'll manage to spin that into something else.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's just going to be more of the same, definitely onto the wedding. All right then. Well, let's just see, shall we?
Let's see.